Kenny or just like send it?
We'll just send it. He'll come in and
it's like a child just going back and forth.
Yeah,
just like the fucking
exactly.
in the back.
Well, welcome back to the Truckery podcast. I am one of your hosts, John, with Carrot Customs.
And I am your other host, Devin with OBS Solutions. You're listening to our lovely shit show, the Truckery podcast. Like John said, we have a guest in today.
Yes, we do. We have Brad.
Oh, and we have Kenny here, but you're not going to say shit today because we're not having you talk at all. He's just monitoring us.
Yeah, we got Brad from Barrett Performance and Engineering.
Yeah, I'm right down the street from John, like 8 minutes away or something like that, on the way to Tumalo. We do light duty diesel repair for Chevy Dodge pickups and performance.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Right on. So, real quick, I always start with like, how'd you get in the industry? So if you will.
Yeah.
And like, what is your passion? Just trucks in general, or just one body style?
Yeah. So. The interesting part was back in high school, junior year was in 2005. A friend of mine came into our auto class over at Ebon High with one of the first diesel power magazines. And in that, I wish I kind of had that original magazine, put it up on the wall, but it had a 05 Cummins in it that was making like 1,000 horsepower. The guy towed with it, daily drove it, and worked with it. And, used it for his business, and you could do all three of them, and he was getting, 20 miles a gallon or something like that. Never really had heard about, that kind of thing before.
Sure.
1,000 horsepower street gas rig or something, it's, especially back then, it was right on the edge, and, running race fuel and all that. And it's like, man, you can do that with a diesel and daily drive it and tow with it.
And have a good time.
And use it as a work truck. And then it's part of the family. So ever since then, 05, I was like OCD researching diesel on all the forums, old Comp D,
just going through the motions, learning.
Powerstroke forum. So I'd get home from school and then just pour into the forums and just read, then got all the magazines, and just I had a huge passion for it. So then that and fitness and all that started to come in, and I've just always had that diesel interest, and I've always wanted to be an engineer. My uncle was an engineer, so just kind of pursued that through high school and college, mechanical engineering. And then I thought, well, I don't really want to sit behind a desk my entire life, so decided to go do the technical side of things, the automotive tech. So went back to school and got the AC stuff and couple other degrees, and then went into engineering, and then the shutdown happened, and cut our hours back to 3 days a week. I was over at Fuel Safety and Fuel Cell Design, and then just started working on trucks again. I had worked at another shop previously, and then that just blew up, and I've been here ever since. So just on my own, and had some techs here and there, and
nice. So you started out, so did you finish engineering school, or like you finished engineering, you have a degree in engineering?
Yeah, mechanical engineering, BS.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
We have a brain here.
Oh yeah.
Like
I told you.
Damn it, Kenny, we're left here in the dark.
Look at the brain on Brad, as they say.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's pretty rad that you like, hey, I've got a degree in engineering, but I'm gonna go work on diesel trucks.
Yeah. This pays more, so
and you're like,
and it's my passion, yeah. So
correct. So you're doing your hobby. That's badass.
Yeah, you just have to play the sides of getting burnt out versus having fun. So
that's exactly it. 100%.
That first 3 to 5 years is tough, and I'm on year 4. So
nice. Well, and so you started at a couple other shops though. It wasn't like you just went like, hey, I'm gonna start my own gig. You actually like, absolutely. Hey, I'm gonna learn. Went to a couple shops. So a couple of them, is that right?
Yeah. So I started at I did my co-op program through COCC. The ASC Tech, and we supposed to work with 2 shops.
Okay.
What I did both of them over at Performance Authority when Bennett owned it. Learned a ton there, and then kind of developed my way of inspecting a vehicle, maximizing the RO and all that. Just there, seeing what they were doing, and maybe what they were missing at the time. What I was seeing, things that could have been repaired and quoted on a truck, that they would just push out the door just to get other trucks in. So when I finished that, and then ended up starting a torque factory over in Redmond, a good friend of mine helped building that shop up. I ended up running the front of that because 20 years of OCD research, I've got all the build lists, all the parts lists, and just am familiar with all the aftermarket stuff with that. and really, blew that up. So yeah, just being able to see, use all my experience and research and then apply it was really cool. And then, so yeah, Performance Authority, Torque Factory, worked there for about 3 years. And then I ended up getting sniped out of there to set up a company doing hybrid battery reconditioning down in California on the same equipment with the COCC hybrid programs had that a friend and I helped develop some curriculum for. And then I ended up teaching at the COCC Advanced Diesel Diagnostics class up there for 2 years. Or 1 year, and then the drivability diagnostics class for a year there as well, chassis dyno stuff. So, yeah, no, it's just been a blast.
That's awesome.
Well, you had some questions lined up, John, so I don't want to steal some of your...
No, you're good. I mean, I get to talk to Brad all the time, so, but I know we've had a lot of people, this kind of started off as the OBS Truckery podcast, and we decided we'll rebrand it into just the Truckery podcast.
Well, mainly our passion is the derpy OBS trucks, but we really you and I are both geeks for everything from square bodies to, everything from first gens, whatever. Yeah. And we even talk about stupid German cars on here, right? Like, every once in a while.
Stupid German cars, some Toyota stuff. But I know we have a lot of listeners that are into 7.3s and 7.3 performance. So figured it'd be great to pick your brain about that stuff, because I mean, both of us work on 7.3s a lot, and you've got a pretty rowdy 7.3 truck, but neither one of us are like your...
I just think there's such a
horsepower nerds.
Well, like Kenny and I always talk about, there's such a mystical like recipe for making them work and not build too much EGTs. With my experience, I just compound turbos is almost the biggest fix for everything in my opinion.
Right.
It's like, that's why I think I love the Cummins platform. It's such a badass platform to do that. But yeah, then when we got into 7.3 stuff really hard and we started talking with Dan, and it was like T4 setup and, making things flow right. It's a eye opener on what we can do with our old dinosaur 7.3s.
Totally.
And it's always a funny thing, because we have so many people that come to us and they go, hey, I want to do this, this, and this. You're like, well, wait a minute. Is that engine even stout enough to handle that? And there's a whole, I think, underlying, people don't really realize that head studs, girdle at some point for a certain number of power you're looking for.
Right.
And so like a gentleman like yourself comes in, has a lot of experience with that, and that's why we're like, well, this would be awesome to pick your brain. What works, what doesn't, what sends the rods through the block, what stretches out the head bolts, and what have you experienced? So
well, I think because we do a lot of the repair side of things, and in the real, I guess everybody's in the real world, but this is the not coming from an enthusiast standpoint typically from the customers that I deal with. Well, I mean, a lot of them are, but when like you and us talk to a lot of our, longtime customers or return customers, those guys are enthusiasts, diehards. So, they're researching all this kind of stuff. They try to keep up with all the latest things, and, oh man, what about this? What about that? 98% of the people that come through my door are just your average Joe that may have heard, oh yeah, we could put a chip on it, or, intake, exhaust, stuff like that. Well, yeah, I hear about, these new trucks are making 500 horsepower or something like that. What can I get that on mine? Okay, well, now we got to look at what is the truck going to be used for.
Totally.
And the biggest thing is how conservative are you going to be with the driving once we, do that
with that skinny pedal.
Totally.
And how how who's going to be driving it, but you can, the customer will say, okay, I'll go easy on it, and that never happens.
So I guess a good question to start with then would be, how much power will a stock bottom end on a 7.3 handle? Yeah,
so the general consensus is 600 horse on the stock forged OBS rods, but it depends on what the programming is. A lot of, some of the early stuff was heavy on the timing on the bottom end, but and there are guys making more than that, but
with it's just a set of head studs or what?
Yeah, studs. And it just depends on, obviously the health of the pistons. I've got 5 long blocks on the floor right now, just cores that all have cracked pistons. And that's a huge problem. And it's almost all due to, injectors that worn out, and then you get, delayed injection, so high EGT because the tolerance between the poppet and the electromagnet is longer, so it takes longer to actuate the injector. You get delayed injection, and then that pushes the combustion late, which increases EGT in that cylinder, and
causes all kinds of that stuff.
I was just gonna say, how many of our listeners actually know how a Huey injector works?
Oh,
what
yeah.
wears inside of that?
That's a good point,
Oh,
Kenny.
yeah,
Dang,
yeah.
that's a good point.
Because I wasn't a Ford tech, but I was an international tech.
Oh,
when
yeah.
those engines were coming through.
Yeah.
And that concept, if you understand it, it helps people understand the importance of how the oil system works and why it's so critical to have those components in good shape.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And how that affects the fuel. Is it like oil, fuel? I don't know. I just know that 7.3 injectors are really expensive, but I don't know what magic is happening inside of them.
It's all the science, Kenny.
Yeah. Into that,
If I pay more money, do I get more science?
Can you go over just the basics
we'll
of
go to
that?
the basics, and I'll have Kenny talk about some of the wear points, because I know some basics, but I'm not as familiar with maybe more of the detail stuff. But so the Huey system, hydraulic electronic unit injection. We use high pressure oil to pressurize, or it uses high pressure oil in the injector to intensify the fuel that hits the injector. So there's two sections in the injector itself, and then there's either a 7-to-1 or a 5-to-1 plunger in the injectors. The 5-to-1 is the hybrid, and you can get drops oil volume for the total volume of fuel injected when you get into a larger injector. So we have a high pressure oil pump, H-pop, and that's 7.3 and the 6 liter are very similar. Same idea that they use. So the 7.3 in stock form usually pressurizes around 2,500 psi. With programming, they're in the 2,900. You can go 3,400 is the pop-out pressure in the H-pop.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
You start getting above that 3,000 range, the efficiency of injection drops, and so it's not. You actually are putting more parasitic drag on the engine, and there's not much gain for the power. You can actually ground out the 12-volt feed to the IPR, and it's kind of like the Hyper Max on the 6 liter, that the 5,000 psi. Block off that you can put on a 6 liter.
Is that like when they hit the nitrous?
Yeah. Well, so like Warren Diesel and all those guys in their sled truck and stuff, you can tell when they're bringing it up on the sled, and then he just leans on it, and it's like a hammer drop, just bam, and then like 2,000 whatever horsepower hits, and trying to pedal that is like a cannon.
Is that why you see them like when they're when they're doing that?
Bam, bam,
okay.
And it just blows the tires off, because when you go full throttle, it slams that 5,000 psi.
Okay.
So it's like uncontrollable. So, but so Huey's. So we use that high pressure oil pressure to intensify the fuel. Fuel pressure should be 60, 65 psi, and then we hit it with 25 to 3,000 psi of oil. So you typically get in what it's 17,000. Something like that.
Because that's your 5-to-1 or 7-to-1.
Yeah. So a 7-to-1 is going to get in like 18, 19,000 or something like that. And then a 5-to-1 is like 16.5, 17. So the hybrids tend to be a little smokier. And there's kind of a transition point between like a 180, 100 and which 180, 100s and 180, 200s require dual pumps because of the
oil volume.
Yeah, need more.
And they're conventional versus hybrid. So, and then you really need to go like a 250-100 to really make more power, even though the CC flow rate is more, because you're dropping that injection pressure. It doesn't burn as well. So that's like my shop truck's got 250-100s, and I really need to go to a 300-200 to really
get it to do it.
Yeah, because it's just smoky and it's not making as much power as it could.
So on that, I'm trying not to break it down and just drag this out.
Yeah, no worries.
For understanding of people, because you go, let's just pick full force. You go on their website to order injectors, and you see these numbers. Yeah. 250, 100, 300, 200, whatever. Yeah. Can you briefly explain what each of those numbers means?
Yeah.
Nice one, Kenny.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Keep reining me in. I'll just keep talking for like
right, and it's because It's just like the other day.
No,
it's something you do.
Yeah,
like
we just
live
muscle
it. Memory, and you can get really carried away.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
You bring a dumb guy into the room like me, I'm gonna like.
I have to watch myself talking to customers like that. Yeah, because I'll just go off on a tangent.
Well, no, you're good.
Yeah,
that's a good question though. Like that's a damn good one, Ken,
because people better understand when they're looking to make an upgrade, how that works, and how it's affected by the other components.
Sure, and that way, like you look at those numbers, and like general public are like, what do these numbers mean? I just I just want a horsepower gain. That's all people look at, right?
Totally.
Like I just want to pull my boat or whatever to wherever and go fast and roll coal and be cool. And
or they think like my truck has worn out injectors. I will just get
new ones,
bigger ones, always bigger.
Let's do that. Sure.
And that's why Unlimited, when they came out with their sizing back in the day, they did stages. Yeah. And they didn't initially used to list the sizes.
So they made it generic so people didn't have
stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 3.5, 4. Yeah, exactly.
So you didn't have it just made it so it was easy. That makes sense. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And
so what's a 180? What's the first number and the second number mean?
Yeah. So the first number is CC flow rate in 1,000 injection events at full duration. So 180 cc's in 1,000 cycles. And then the second number is percentage over stock. In terms of total cross-sectional area of all of the nozzles added together. So so a 180/30 would be 180 cc. So a stock, I'll go through the sizes on stock stuff. So the stock OBS is like a 90/95 cc, and it's 0%, obviously, because that's a
stock.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm not 100% sure on the OBS versus the Super Duty nozzles, if the nozzles are larger, but
we'll stick with OBSs right now.
From the aftermarket standpoint, a 0% is stock. So
right.
Regardless of whether
and that's your nozzle size.
Yeah. So that's total cross-sectional area of the nozzle. So just think of it as, if you added all the orifices together, it makes one hole. That's stock. 25%, 30% is going to be 30% larger total area. So
when you go 100%, you're going to 100%, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're doubling.
So basically, what that ends up with is so stock OBS is 90/95 cc, and then a Super Duty is a 130.
Okay.
And so 130/0. So when you're running a 160/0, 160/30. And then it goes 180/30, 180/80, 180/100, 200. The 100 and 200s are customs. They don't typically sell them over the shelf. And then you go up into the hybrids. So so typically just a good bump over stock is the 160. That's like the smallest size anybody makes. You can get, like Unlimited makes their tow power. I can't remember what they call it, but it's a 30%.
Okay.
So they just put a 30% nozzle on. So
it keeps it kind of safe for doesn't burn the house down, so to speak.
Basically what the larger nozzle does is it gets the fuel into the cylinder quicker. So you don't need to run a longer duration on the injection event to get, that more fuel in. So that nozzle only flows a certain amount at that, at whatever pressure you're running, in terms of the high pressure oil pressure. So the larger the nozzle, total cross-sectional area is, the quicker you can get that fuel into the cylinder. Now, there's the trade-off point of when you go so big that you lose the atomization, so the particles are not as small because you're pushing it through a larger orifice, so you need higher pressure to atomize.
Okay.
But at low loads, you don't have the high pressure, so those tend to be smokier, so the larger the nozzle is, the smokier it gets.
Yeah.
But at full throttle, you can hammer that fuel in real quick, and that's ideal. You want to get as much fuel early so that it has time to combust, because we're not spark injection, we're compression. So there's and these are a single shot. That's the other thing, because stock Super Duty, I just thought of that.
Right.
The stock Super Duty ones are a split shot, and it's a mechanical actuation in the injector where it injects a small initial hit to preheat the combustion chamber, and then the main charge. So that's why they run quieter. But when we do aftermarket, all the aftermarket ones go to a single shot, except who's the company that does it?
We won't hold you to it, Brad.
Yeah,
you're good.
It's okay. We'll just say there's a company.
Anyway, there's a company that makes a 300cc split shot.
Really?
Interesting.
Yeah, and I've always wanted to try them, but I'll have to look it up later. But And they make some good injectors. They balance theirs tighter than anybody's. They balance them to like 1% or something like that. But they're a good company. So, but anyway, so that preheat, the main event combusts a lot cleaner regardless of the atomization. So that's where, it's better for the emissions, and that's why they did it in the Super Duty stuff. But when we go to aftermarket, all the aftermarkets are single shot except that one. But, and no, most people aren't going to run a 300cc, which is pretty big.
That's a damn big injector.
Right.
Yeah,
that's a damn big injector.
So is that where tuning comes in on a Super Duty?
Yeah.
Because you're going from a split to a single.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you do have to get custom tuning. They will run, they'll idle, but they won't run.
They won't.
What are the symptoms of the wrong tuning or the wrong injector?
It's been a while since I've done since we idled one out of the shop. It's been about 10 years, and then parked it waiting for tuning. But I think it sounds like a barrel of hammers when it's idling.
That bad?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's because
just a fuel knock the entire time.
I think what happens, I could be wrong, just speculating, but when because the split shot is happening in the injector mechanically, you have to initiate the injection event earlier to get the initial pre-injection to happen, and then there's a delay before the main event hits. So on a single shot, it's hitting the full shot when you hit actuation. When it gets commanded, the split shot will have that delay. So it's as if you have probably another 8 degrees or 10 degrees initial advance. So I think
it's almost like running a worn out injector.
Well, that's the opposite. So because
at
least
it's
the way
running
that I
late.
understand it, so going back to that, but so I think that's why, because your initial, it's like a 10 to 15 degree initial advance, and so at idle, it just starts. It sounds like it's hammering. Yeah.
Right.
Going to the other question with the wear in the injectors, kind of how they operate. So if we had a cross section of the injector, I could show you, but actually, there you go. So yeah, we've got the poppet valve. So as the solenoid lifts that magnet, sends the electric signal down there, it lifts the poppet valve out, and then the oil starts flowing into the intensifier piston. It's like a hydraulic kickover effect. The magnet just moves a small, that part a small amount, and then that tip over of the hydraulic pressure creates the actuation event, and then we get all the fuel into the intensifier piston, or oil, sorry. And then the intensifier piston pushes down. We got the larger diameter up here, and then a smaller diameter there. So, and there's the fuel right in here. And then from there on, it's just like a mechanical injector where we've just got a pintle with a spring in there. And then as the pressure in this section increases, it overcomes the spring pressure, and then we start the injection event. So that split shot, that is happening twice. And that's one of the reasons, that and just in general, how long this takes is one of the reasons why I have limited RPM in the 7.3s, because the faster you go, the faster you have to get that injection event to happen.
Okay.
On 8 injectors.
This whole cycle takes a finite amount of time to happen versus a common rail injection, which is just open closed.
Yeah.
Especially the piezo stuff, which is really fast. And they can do, 3, 5, 7, 9 injection events per combustion event. So yeah. So even the split shot doing 2, all that's got to, it ends up, I think it's within the poppet or I don't remember how it works, but it's all mechanical within there. So, but yeah, that finite event, we start to drop off fuel flow, and what ends up happening is you have to run such a big injector to get that fuel in a certain amount of time, that injection event ends up later and later and later, and then you end up with high EGT and
a lot of smoke
power falls off. Yeah. High end. So yeah, there's always going to be trade-offs because of the,
So I guess that kind of goes to like my question, or another question I've got, and I think it kind of answers it. Like, can you reliably make comparable power to like a new 6.7 with a 7.3, like for towing basis? And it sounds like
make it say reliable.
Exactly. That's what I said. Reliably.
That's the.
Yeah, but like you can only push that antiquated, even though it was high tech at the time, you can only push that antiquated injection system so far, and it can't compete with a common rail.
So obviously we're competing against piezo or It's piezo in the Powerstroke, and micro sac nozzle, all this technology where there's really quick injection events. The 6.7s do 30,000 psi of injection pressure versus 19 or 19.5 or 16.5 in the hybrid. So and then multiple injection events. So we start, we can preheat the combustion chamber with multiple hits, one main, and then we can do post injection for the regeneration and stuff and emissions control and all that. So that's what we're up against. But I would say from a budgetary standpoint, if for the average person, I think that 350 horse range is probably
safe enough,
a really safe spot.
So you're saying like 350, sorry to interrupt you, but it's 350, like, hey, you don't have to worry about the skinny pedal being abused. Usually you can tow what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on,
totally.
Everyone thinks 30,000 pounds, you could tow that all day long over the hill.
And we're talking Super Duty, because the OBS with its non-intercooled setup, we run really high intake, a turbo compressor outlet temp is really high, and then it does that hard 90. Oh man, I haven't. It's been a while since we've done, intake air temp testing on a truck, but it's like in the hundreds.
It's hot.
So we're real hot coming out of there. So if you're going to be towing, so typically the 180/30 is kind of the upper limit of what I would say is reliable or doable if you're towing. So you can daily drive. I mean, I do it with my truck, 250/100s, 300 200s or whatever, but you're not going to be towing. You can tow with a 238/80, but you can need a diesel side H-pop, stuff like that, on a Super Duty or intercool the OBS.
Right.
So
like with all the supporting mods of an like intercooler, e-fuel.
I mean, you got it. The OBS, you have to jack the horn up and drop a rig on it to. It's just there's a lot of work you got to do to run reliably.
Yes.
Right.
You talk about intake temps. There was, and this isn't any means to toot the OBS solutions horn, but we had a guy we worked with that installed our intercooler bracket kit, and he worked for, or I believe he still does work for Edge.
Oh,
so they have a lot of data monitoring, right? And he did a dyno pull before the intercooler with some
perfect
upgraded parts.
That's right. I forgot about that.
It's on our website, John.
Oh, okay, I'll pull that up.
He has the charge air temperature before and after the intercooler, and he used a CSF intercooler. It wasn't like, this is all our stuff.
Replacement. Yeah.
Like I said, I'm
Which
not
I see
trying to say that ours is the best. It was just, hey, this is the value of intercooling your OBS truck.
Oh yeah, even with not a super high end one.
Yeah, intercooler bracket kit, John. And it's on the product description.
Yeah, he did a bunch of testing with that. I forgot all about that. Thanks, Kenny. He did it with and without.
Right there, just select the intercooler bracket. Scroll down there.
Data.
So where it says, for those of you looking for data.
Oh, there we go.
I'd always been asked, and he was willing to do that.
Wow, look at that. Before 1633, after 1365.
That's a big drop.
Charge.
Yeah, 339 to 106.
Yeah.
What does it show? What ambient is?
Ooh.
Go to the very bottom. It says at the very says.
Oh.
Charge air.
Average 25 to 35 above ambient. Yeah, so because we're pulling hot underhood air with the open element air filter.
It says on the top what they did. It was a third gear pull.
Yeah, third gear on a 94 to 97 7.3 with 145,000 miles. Third gear torque converter locked 45 to 70. Yeah.
I forgot all about that. Thanks, Kenny.
That's fantastic info.
Yeah, so
right.
180/30s stock turbo with a 1.0 housing, 3-inch downpipe, 4-inch exhaust. Yeah, and then just a BHAF. Yeah,
what's awesome. BHAF?
Big honking air filter.
Yeah. I like that.
No,
it's the best setup. Yeah,
you can't really argue with that.
Yeah, that's like 200 plus degree drop, and then on both of them. Yeah,
and not even for power, but for reliability.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing is
what kills engines.
And it's exhaust temp, elevated exhaust temp for long periods of time.
Yep.
And that's like the common rail Cummins, drop exhaust seats, all this kind of stuff, because the engine can't sink that heat for that long. You can run 1600 EGT for 5 seconds, 7 seconds, something like that. That's pushing it. But I've run 2000 in my 1,000 horse second gen. So
that's a good question. Real quick though, that's the one question everyone asks. What is a safe number for EGTs? Like everyone says, well, it's around 13. It's around 1,200.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean,
well, and it's kind of a catch-22 too, because I've got trucks that we've done some big work on, and they like did a 2016 Ram that makes in the 1,000 horsepower at the tire, and that thing never, even on a big tune, never goes above like 1350, something like that.
Really?
But you are still that elevated temp because you're making so much more power. The cylinder temp or cylinder pressure is so much higher. You're just going to be stressing all these other parts that were only designed to handle.
So you're not looking
at the tire.
You're not looking at the EGTs at that point. You have to realize what you're putting in that cylinder.
Exactly right.
That's a good point. Okay.
So
on that note,
the rule of thumb never,
over what?
Yeah.
For EG, what's your number for EGTs?
Yeah, so 1250 is pretty much the max continuous you want to run for the average guy, and then 1500 for 5 seconds, something like that. You're racing your buddy or whatever.
Yeah.
So
okay,
but the problem is that only applies to a good running engine with good injectors, good compression. A large percentage of the OBSs that I'm getting in now, we're 25 plus years old. When you get one in with injectors, it's running real rough.
Yeah.
I am now compression testing them all before I put injectors in, because I just had one that we ended up putting an engine in that, it's got bad injectors. Yeah, it's blue, idling, Hazen blue, all this kind of stuff. Get poor fuel economy, poor power. Put injectors in, and it still has,
issues
for sure. Yeah, it's got rough idle, all that. Compression test it. Oh, cylinder's low.
Mm-hmm.
So
crack piston.
Yeah.
I know what happens when
all 5 of them on the floor have crack pistons. Yeah.
All 5.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's super common.
Yeah.
I think
that's of that delayed injection event when the injectors wear out.
Now I'm going to ask a question though. Are you seeing it more on, because at least what we've seen, a couple of them, but I'm no expert. Are you seeing it more on like, hey, it's a hood rack stuff going on with it, smoky burnouts, added a tune to it, maybe some bigger injectors, and is that where you're kind of seeing a little
50-50.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's the ones that are going down are higher mileage in stock form.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, and I have one, or did one that had 360 on the original injectors, which I didn't even know they
oh geez.
But
wow.
He was starting with ether and all that kind of stuff. And it's not to say the ether cracks them, but it's just that delayed injection event. So that cylinder, whichever one has like a couple of bad injectors, typically they don't wear evenly. So you'll get one that's really bad, like it knocks at idle and all that stuff. That cylinder is going to run way hotter than the rest of them, and that one's going to crack. And
that's
it always starts at the lip of the bowl. That's why they de-lip the 6.4 piston, stuff like that, because you get that sharp edge, and that heats and then expands and contracts unevenly compared to the rest of the piston, and then it develops wherever the metallurgy is weak. Starts that crack, the crack propagates, and then it goes right down into the oil passage in the bottom of the cylinder, and then you got compression loss. So
that's your problem. Okay.
I didn't know what the big deal was, because aren't the pistons in the cowboy
are de-lipped?
Are de-lipped. And
can
you break that down to like a third grade level? It's like, oh, they're de-lipped, and it's like,
well, so it's like the old adage. Well, you may not have heard it, but the joke in the auto repair is when your grandma brings her car in or something like that to work on it, and the tech goes out and rods on it for a test drive or something like that, and then it blows up. Well, Granny's been in there and never gone past like 30% throttle in that thing, just putting around, driving around. Well, all that carbon has built up in the cylinders, on the pistons. When low load or, for long durations, it's like that Ferrari tune-up. You really need to do that every once in a while to burn the carbon out, right? That's always a joke. Yeah, Dad's going out to burn the carbon out of his Camaro,
Yeah.
Well, that is true. So when you do that, like the guys that are daily driving their diesels unloaded, just using it as a grocery getter, especially the new trucks with the VGT turbo, stuff like that, especially the 6 liters, you never get that unison ring in the turbo to move hardly ever. So it just builds all the carbon up. And then you go, and the one time you tow, or your kid takes it and goes to high school with it,
gives it the onion on date night,
something like that. So what ends up happening is that carbon that's built up on the piston, you will get hot spots. It's just like in a fire, you see the coals, like the corners of the coals will be red, or you get the sparks to fly off, stuff like that. it's anywhere that there's a sharp edge or a low amount of metallurgical mass compared to the rest of the piston, that is going to heat up faster than, you know, the rest of the mass of the piston. So on the lip rolls around and it's got a sharp edge on it, or, I mean, it'll have a radius, but there's a lot less meat right at the corner of the lip. So that's going to heat up faster, and then it sinks the heat into the rest of the piston. Well,
and for real quick to interject, for those that don't know, a diesel piston has, it's not a flat top, it has a bowl inside of it where the fuel gets sprayed into, and it's that lip around that bowl in the piston.
Yeah,
the outer diameter.
Different designs, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, because a gas vehicle will have a combustion chamber in the cylinder head. We have the combustion chamber in the piston. So, and then they're flat cylinder heads. So, so anyway, so that lip will heat up quicker, and when you're long duration, high exhaust temp, that's going to get, you know, real hot, and thermal expansion occurs. So that grows and then shrinks, grows and shrinks, and that fatigue stress over time will weak. And there's always, you know, metallurgical imperfections because there's a tolerance, you know, in production and all that.
Sure.
So wherever the weak point is in that metallurgy, then you'll get a crack to propagate. And it's like a blowtorch, like on when my second gen was a 5.9 block, before I 6.7'd it, I ended up blowtorching the bottom ringland out of the one of the pistons on the compression ring, because, you know, 2,000 degree high exhaust temp
coming back and forth.
it ended up overheating the ringland, and, you know, just like when you're using a acetylene torch, you get that metal up to the red hot point,
the molten part.
Yeah, and then you hit it with air and it blows the molten metal through. That's what ends up happening, like on the lip sometimes, or and then you compound that with a poor atomizing injector or late duration. So the combustion event's still happening as the piston's going down. So you get the EGT high, and then that expands, and then you crack, and then that
happens.
So what is delipping? What's the benefit of a delipped piston?
So you just pull that sharp point, because the bowl kind of curls up, and then you get a point right there. It depends on, you know, the engine, the design of the combustion chamber. So we will pull that lip back till either straight or slightly back, and that gets rid of that
edge, that
small mass, and the edge that's sticking up into the combustion chamber. So the piston grows and, you know, expands and contracts
more uniformly.
Evenly. Yeah, exactly. The 6.4s are notorious for that. The pistons cracking and stuff.
Well, that being said, that's a good note. So that if your kid who's just going to take the truck out for prom night, and you've been babying it its whole life, it's like low miles, just put a 2x4 underneath the pedal. Like, if you're going to take your girl off on prom,
or just be a bandit driver check mark.
just stick your foot in it a few times.
Then before you give it to your kid, go out and do some smoky burnouts.
Make sure you ride it once a week.
Drive her like a teenager.
Yeah,
I literally tell people to do that, like 6 liters especially, because the variable geometry turbo on those, the control side of it, that they don't have like they do on the new trucks, where they do a bunch of sweeps and all this other controls. So that you end up sticking the VGT on those constantly.
I don't know how many of those turbos we've had apart for that unison ring, and it would waller it out, and then it was a pain in the butt, and the amount of carbon that we see on well, just like on the sheriff's 6.7s, because they're sit there for hours writing reports, and you take the intake off. Yeah, just sit there idling, and you take the intake off, and it's like, it might be this big, right? But then it's so carboned up, it gets tiny.
Yeah. Yep.
And it like, carbon is such a nasty thing. I was telling Kenny back in the day, we'd have to, when we worked on Crown Vics for the state police, they would sit there and idle and write reports, right? And so then what happened is it build up carbon. They go to take off on a pursuit or something, and it would cause a random miss. Yeah. Like a random miss you could never find. And then we've started seeing carbon on the back of the valves. It would it would starve the fuel, right? It suck the fuel in. And I think Kenny was like going through the shop, like, what's these walnut shells for? So we'd have to blast with walnut shells. Yeah.
That's an Audi like protocol for like after certain mileage on newer Audis.
You blast with walnut shells.
You pull the intake out, and on each one you walnut shell the top of the valves.
And that's what we had to do on the Crown Vics. We pull the intake up, and you're looking at the valves, and you walnut shell blast the back of the valves.
It's all back again now too, because the direct injection stuff now doesn't have fuel hitting the back of the valve, and they do EGR and positive case ventilation, and that mixes the oil and the carbon from the EGR.
That's a big deal.
It is huge. It's a massive problem.
In fact, that's why our fuel injection cleaning kits are a big deal right now. Our guys are always like, you'll go to the back of the shop, you hear cars revving. You're like, what the hell is that tech revving that car for? Well, it's a fuel injection cleaning for direct injection rig. And and it's a machine that we use. This tech sets it up and it throttles oscillates a throttle while it's injecting the cleaner.
Is that kind of like the old school method, which I just did this the other night on my buddy's beater car, where you pour seafoam in a cup and then you take a vacuum line and you just sit there, suck it up, and then you get that last final push and shut it off.
You and you let it sit.
It smokes. We did it on a 2000 Accord like on Wednesday for my buddy. Long story, but like, let's clean this thing out.
Yeah.
The amount it was smoking.
Yeah.
That's a common thing. That was a common thing.
Really well. Yeah, it runs like a top now.
But you had to feed it just nice. Like you didn't want to give it too much as you're feeding that stuff in there.
Yeah.
I think didn't they use, besides seafoam, there was something else that we used back in the day. I can't remember.
You can use water, but
that would be sketchy. That's got to be. That's when you pay attention. But that's interesting. Carbon, though, people don't realize how bad carbon is.
Yeah, it's the most aggressive abrasive. I mean, it's literally.
Thank God we put EGRs on all of our new diesels, right?
Absolutely.
Smart move, bud.
Awesome. Let's do that.
Saving the world with EGR valves.
So on OBS trucks, can you give let's say that. For listeners, let's say they've got supporting mods being basic stuff like e-fuel, intercooler, and exhaust, get rid of that downpipe.
And a tuner.
Yeah, good tuner. What would your ideal injector turbo combo be for somebody that wants to use their truck as their all-around truck, be able to hook up to the camper, tow that, be able to just drive around, what would you?
And the wife can hop in it and you have to worry about her.
That's a big one,
right?
Yeah. So if you're stock turbo,
it doesn't have to be stock turbo. Just what
a KC
turbo
drop in or
injector
something
would you do?
I like the 180/30. Now, I have found that they make more power than most people say they do. At least the guys that, are speccing out the injectors, they say they typically make 350 to 375 or something like that. Maybe 400, but I've made 450 with them. So, and that's on a couple friends' 7.3s that are, maybe the Charlie's has a T4 364.5 from my rate. We made 480 something like that with his.
Wow.
With a 180.
Really?
Wow.
So
and what size turbo was it, you said?
It's a 364.5.
Okay.
So with a 74 turbine.
Is it not much smoke come out of it? Does it stay pretty clean?
It is. It hazes.
Does it?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
And it's almost one of those things that Full Force swears that they're 180/30s. They run like a 180/80. So, but I don't know. But I've made, they will consistently make 400, and they can run hot if you're,
not paying attention.
Yeah. So, but the 160/30 is a really good all around because it's a big, you think stock OBS is 95 cc 0. You put a 160, it's almost double the size.
Yeah.
Is a 160/30. That's a really good size. They make in the mid 300s, no problem. 320, they rate them at 325 or something like that. So, and
on a mild tune, EGTs are somewhat manageable.
Yeah.
Okay, with the intercooled.
You'll need an intercooler and a good. I mean, you can do it with just a drop in on OBS, but you got to run it at stock or just a tow and watch it. I've got a customer's truck in. It's got a super chips programmer. I haven't come across if they're really aggressive compared to what I'm used to running. The Hydra with I really like SDK's tuning. I probably run pretty much all of them, and his tends to be the cleanest, the best drivability that I like. But he's consistently hitting 1200 at 40 miles an hour. Pulling, I think he pulls like a 8,000 pound, 10,000 pound trailer or something like that. It's a 250/97 non-intercooled, just has intake and exhaust and a tune on it.
Non-intercooled.
Yeah. So it's run, with on his toe tune, it runs 1200. That's as fast as he can go, is 40, 45, because it's in third gear, because anything more than that, it just keeps creeping. And his, obviously, EGT's pre-turbo. And that's another thing. There's a lot of shops or guys that are putting them in post-turbo. Like if you go to a heavy shop, all the Class 8 stuff, it's post-turbo measured. And that's like a 400-degree difference. So 900 post-turbo is like 1200, or 850 or something like that. It's like 1200, 1250 pre-turbo in a manifold. So that's something to think about.
Make sure your EGT probe is in the right spot.
1100. Oh, well, it's post-turbo, so that's way hot.
Where do you like to put your EGT probe then, for the listeners out there?
Yeah, so I drill it into the driver's side exhaust manifold. Okay. You can either go from the top or the bottom.
Not the passenger side, or a reason?
You can. It's just, I like
either one.
The wire is a little shorter on the driver's side, but you can run it either side, because they're, especially like EGT, or Edge, EAS, or... Yep. Whatever, all the kits have enough wire to run it to the passenger side.
The reason why I ask that is because I want people to know, if someone's going to do this, where do you
totally
exactly? Because so many people don't have.
Driver's side's easier to get to, because it doesn't really matter, but the passenger side isn't, the manifold's up high,
easier to drill.
Yeah, so the driver's side's a little easier to drill, and you can get at it from the top too if you take the intake off. But you can do it with the engine running. And
so it blows it out.
The chips out, or you can, if you drill from the top, you drill it and then you just vacuum it out, and it will vacuum, unless you've got a cylinder that's burning oil. Then it's got oil in it.
Well, I just want people to know that, because so many times we get trucks in that don't even have an EGT probe.
Yeah,
right.
And they've got a tuner on it, and I'm like, do you guys know what?
Like that all the time.
Yeah, right.
Well, nothing's wrong with it.
Yeah, not a big deal. There's not any coal coming out of it. I'm good to go. By the way, look at this picture of my big fishing boat I pulled.
Exactly.
Roll and pull. Yeah.
Right. So that's probably why you see cracked pistons, is the fact of ignorance of not.
It can't be due to EGTs, because they're not monitoring them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got to be something else.
It won't hurt you, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Ignorance is bliss when you're pulling the pass.
Exactly.
So 160/30s, what turbo?
Good. So stage 1 KC is really good.
Is it worth going to a T4 at that point?
Well, so if you've got the budget for it, yeah, absolutely, because the drive pressure is high on the drop ends. And
what's drive pressure?
So hey, I love you. Yeah,
I know what it is, but
because they would, so drive pressure is on the exhaust side. So we've got boost pressure is after the compressor, and drive pressure is between the exhaust valve and the turbine inlet. So
like cylinder pressure. Well, no, not
it's
quite.
Just on the exhaust side. So you want, ideal is like 1-to-1 exhaust to boost, or drive pressure to boost pressure, or less drive pressure to boost, which you can have if you got a good efficient turbo setup. But we tend to see, you can watch the exhaust back pressure sensor and boost pressure. The exhaust back pressure taps at 48 psi. They're both absolute sensors, so they read from 0 psi up, and ambient pressure up here is like 13.5 psi. So key on, they sit at 13.5. That's one of the checks I always do, because EBP sensor is always biased like 90% of the time, and plugged with carbon and all that stuff. So and that does, according to Hypermax, the EBP sensor does play a part in fueling. So which a lot of people, it's primarily there for controlling the exhaust back pressure valve, which helps engine warm up. But EBPV, if anybody's seen that acronym, but it does play a part in fueling, at least to some degree. Okay. So
make sure that's correct for a lot of people out there,
because you key on and that thing's reading 25 psi.
Yeah.
If you have the EBPV delete pedestal, which gets rid of the valve and all that, and the outlet,
or a T4,
or a T4. Yeah. If you have to have the EBP plugged in, so if that's biased, it can affect fueling, and it can affect fuel economy, and it's usually low boost fueling. Okay. It can affect turbo spool up, stuff like that. So if you got a T4 setup and you don't want to drill it into you got different manifolds without the provision for it, just put it right next to your map sensor, so they always read 1-to-1. That's what Hypermax said.
Put it in the
if you've got intake side, like a diesel sight or riffraff or whatever, the boost fueler.
Yes.
The diesel sight one has 2 8th MPT ports. You can put map on one, and then EBP. Well, you would want them on the same side so they read even, but yeah, so that it keeps them 1-to-1. But anyway, so drive pressure tends to be 1.5 to 1 at minimum on most of the drop-in stuff that I've seen, even the the stage 3, because I had a stage 3. I have a 96 F350 single cab long bed that's got stage 2 cam, push rods, the XTP or Manton springs. What else did I do? It's got the 364 or 464 Dan's Obsession diesel intercooler kit, Beans 3-inch Super Duty plenums, AirDog 165 Bronco tank,
dual H pops,
all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, fluid damper, PMF floating traction bars. It looks ridiculous. Yeah. Big 7-inch Aussie.
So then, what do you think the drive pressure on that is then?
So I need to it tends to be right around 1-to-1.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of the ideal. So it's got the 78, 74 turbine, 64 mil S400, and 250-100s from Rosewood. So really good injector. But so with the drop in, so I had a stage 3 on it with a single stage 2 CNC fab H-pop, and that one would make about 35 psi, and it pegs the EBP, the back pressure valve, instantly. So yeah, that reads like 4850 is like the max, and it's not accurate above like 30 anyway. So that
drop-in turbo is big.
So
drive
they do
pressure.
increase drive pressure. Yeah. So
what's so bad about drive pressure being wrong?
The problem is.
Thank you, Kenny.
Yeah, exactly.
What's so bad about it?
Good. Yeah. So when you stack up all that heat, the cylinder can't evacuate that heat, and the exhaust well. So you retain that heat in the combustion chamber. The exhaust temp goes way up. So that truck with the stage 3 drop in with 250-100s single pump ran 1600 EGT when you'd lean on it. Like, and that's like the max of what that Edge EGT probe will read. So it goes 1650 and then it starts reading like single digits.
Well, I mean, Kenny's right. It's a good question for people so they understand that. But if John's asking what's the best combo to get the job done for people?
If you've got the budget, the T4 is the way to go. Yeah, but you have to run a small charger. So there are companies out there that will make them with a 362, something like that. Because a 64 it doesn't sound like it's that big, but then if you've done any
a 64
mil compressor,
so people know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so the you can do a S300 chassis or S400 chassis. It's the same size, but you get more flow rate through the compressor and typically more exhaust housing options. But so if you have done any reading on like the 6.7 or 6 liter or fixed geometry swaps, guys are running a 362 and they're laggy, like on a and a 363, like a 6.7 Powerstroke back before they had modified VGT stuff. SPE was like the only one that was doing fixed geometry.
I see.
So I put we did like 3 of those on a way back in 2012, 2013. And that was, obviously before 15 when we had the 15 up swap for the early trucks. So the only way to get around to that garbage 11 to 14, 6.7 Powerstroke turbo was fixed geometry. Or you put the stock turbo back in. And then it blew up again because the guys are running huge tunes and towing with it, and it overspeeds them. So we put a 363, 362 on them, and those don't even light till like 2100. So
real quick, Brad. Yeah. Explain to people the numbers on a turbo. That'd be a good.
That's a good one.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people that don't understand turbo numbers and what they mean.
So when somebody says S300 or S400, that's a Borg Warner chassis size. Then you got Garrett that has the GT. Garrett's got a bunch of weird nomenclature.
So there's different manufacturers.
Different manufacturers.
Way to go, boys! You guys couldn't stick to a platform. I love that. Right.
So typically most people run the Borg Warner size or Borg Warner stuff. So, and it's not there's a lot of other companies that are making stuff, not just Borg Warner, but the nomenclature is S300 and S400. Those are the different chassis sizes. So S300. The number that comes after the 3 is the compressor inlet size. So as the air filter, the tube goes into the front of the turbo, that diameter is those next two numbers. So it's either a 58, 62, 64.
And that's the size of the wheel on the diameter of the wheel.
Inlet,
So all of us are on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay.
So KC turbos, stage 1 is a 63, stage 2's well, now I forgot, but
that's okay. Hey, Brad, we're not holding you to it. We're not.
Yeah, stage 3 is a 66. So, and then going back to KC, so they run it 6373. So that second number is the turbocharger or the turbine inlet diameter. So, when you think about a turbo, the compressor wheel, the inlet is smaller, and then it goes out into the housing. And it's the inducer. I should be even more specific. So the 62 is the inducer diameter of the compressor wheel.
Okay.
And then the exducer is larger. On the turbine side, it's the opposite. The inducer, because the exhaust is going through the large side and then out the small side. So you get that reduction. So the inducer on a turbine is larger and the exducer is smaller. So 6373 means it's a 63 inducer size on the compressor. And the 73 is a 73 inducer size on the turbine.
Okay.
But the inducer is the large diameter. So,
listen, Brad has a lot of information in his big brain. I don't know, guys, has everyone realized that by now? And it's like he's got it packed in there.
I told you.
So bear with us, people. If we're going too fast,
Yeah.
you can hit rewind and play it back.
Or listen to it a couple times.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll pick it up.
So Brad, that's why I'm like, okay, stop. Explain to people real quick, because I'm sure there's people going, what the fuck did you just say?
Yeah.
So anyway, all right.
Yeah.
Really quick, I just want to clarify something, because some people think it sounds cool, but it's probably not good. Turbo bark, right? Like I had a 12 valve. And when I had it, I changed the housing side, and you let off after a hard pull, and it.
Oh,
that's a drive pressure difference and a sudden change of pressure on one side or the other. And what's really happening, and why is it maybe not such a good thing, even though it sounds cool?
Yeah. So basically, what's happening is when you're accelerating or you're under load, the exhaust side or the drive side has a certain amount of exhaust energy against the inducer of the turbine, and that's your engine that's of the turbo. That's the engine that's driving the compressor wheel, which is doing the work. So which you're trying to get to do work. So you have that torque or that energy applying torque to the shaft, and then that compressor wheel is pulling in air. And then there's a load on that side as well. And that load is, obviously there's going to be more load twisting the shaft to make it rotate, to, do the work that you want, compress the air, move airflow. So when you let off, you still have inertia in the compressor or the rotating assembly, and it's still pulling in air. And you have from the outlet of the compressor side into the intake, that's under pressure, 10, 15, 20, 25 PSI, whatever. You will have the same or more in the drive side and the exhaust side as well. So you're, not even, but it's relatively, it's at equilibrium if you're at steady state load. When you let off the throttle, all of that drive pressure against the exhaust side immediately disappears. So now you've got 25, 30 PSI. If you could think of it in a static, air's flowing, but if you think of it statically, it would be like you're opening the valve of an air tank, and that valve is the only way for that to go anywhere, because the engine is now not requiring that mass flow rate of air. The only exit is back through the exducer of the compressor wheel through the inducer. So what happens is that either rapidly slows that rotating assembly down, and in some cases will reverse the rotation. So you're thinking the turbo is going 120,000 RPM.
And it stops, goes backwards.
It
almost
either slows it way down or reverses it, and it blows air out through the front, and then the drive pressure will build back up again, and then slow it back down, reverse it, or speed it back up again. Now it pulls air in again, pressurizes it, and then that drops off, pressure pushes it back, slows it down again. So basically what you're doing...
So it's really good for the turbo.
You're doing this with the shaft.
Yeah.
So if you do it hard enough, if you bark the turbo hard enough, especially if you've got a setup like some of the I've got friends that have stage 2 drop-ins that'll do 38-40 psi.
Wow.
Charlie's Super Duty is doing like 45 psi or something like that because he just blocked the wastegate on it. But
why wouldn't you?
Yeah. But
makes sense.
If you let off on that, and it's really common on the HE 351s.
Okay.
On the Cummins, oh man, especially if you don't have the big turbine on it, it's just the stock turbine. That bark will snap the shaft, and it'll snap at the smallest diameter, which is right at on an OE hull set. It will snap right behind the compressor wheel, and it is a controlled failure. Now a lot of these, the overseas stuff, some of those other ones, the failure rate will be like at the turbine or in the middle of the shaft, so they can't be pulled back apart, and it's a catastrophic failure. So they're not as controlled as like the OE stuff. But so the problem is over time that fatigue of the shaft occurs, and then it will cause turbo failure. So or it wears the thrust bearing out. Duncan Finley at Finley Precision constantly is putting videos up of guys that are just riding on stuff or lugging.
Okay,
that's another problem. So one of the big problems with the stock Super Duty turbo that has a lot of surge issue, and I'm going to explain surge. So that's barking. It is technically, there will be surge that occurs because you get some turbulent flow as the speeds change and all that. But surge is, when you look at a compressor graph, it's low load and high pressure ratio. So high boost, it's, atmospheric versus outlet pressure is called the pressure ratio. So low RPM, but high load. So Super Duty's fourth gear locked.
Just
towing
like
a hill.
towing a hill. Okay.
Yeah. You start pulling it down into the 2000 RPM range, and it will pull down, on the Super Duties or OBSs too, but they'll pull down to, 1300 or something like before it kicks down. If you're, especially in a stock truck or a truck that doesn't have trans tuning, you just have a super chip or something like that doesn't have that stuff. It will pull down super low, and you get this sound coming through the intake. And that's basically a small version of that turbo bark where the compressor wheel is unloading and loading because you're getting turbulent air, and it's creating these vacuum pockets and low pressure zones behind the tip of the compressor wheel, which is changing the loading on the compressor. So it's speeding up, slowing down, speeding up, slowing down. And that's also hard on them. And that's why, the original Wicked wheel came out, and then the billet wheels, all that stuff to fix that original stock. What is it, like a 10-blade single plane or something like
on
that?
The OBS
on the Super Duty.
On the Super Duties,
yeah,
okay.
And then you go back to the 4x4 or can't remember the 4+4 or 5+5, whatever the stock OBS is. That one doesn't give you much more performance, but it doesn't have the surge.
So it's a little bit more reliable.
They used to sell it as like an anti-surge wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember seeing it on like Riff Raff's website or something like that back then.
It's literally just an OBS wheel. Yeah.
They put an OBS wheel on a Super Duty.
Yeah, because it kills the surge. You don't pick up any power, but yeah.
Sure.
It stops the surge.
Longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. So all that's, and that puts a lot of load, because as you think, when the compressor wheel is pulling air, it's pulling the rotating assembly this way, so it's riding on the backside of the thrust washer, and then when you let off and all the boost comes in, it goes out that way and it pushes it back this way. So you get a lot of, on guys, you can tell when you pull a turbo apart. I build a lot of turbos. You can tell when guys have been barking them or really rodding on them. It will hammer the front side of the thrust and
blows it out.
Yeah, it'll just wear right through the front side. Yeah.
So would you say, I just thought of this as we're talking about surge and RPM, like a rapid drop off. Let's say you're I noticed it because I had a manual transmission. You would experience it more with a manual than an automatic. You're on a hard pull, right? I'm not even saying hot rodding.
Yeah.
But like obviously when a manual transmission, you have to get out of that throttle to grab the next gear.
Oh yeah.
And so,
did you see that on heavy truck, Kenny? Like, was that like thing for semi truck stuff? Because I feel like turbos and diesels all came along from heavy truck.
So
yeah,
that's where on the newer
it's
stuff,
all trickled down. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, because I've heard this on some trucks. Ours are all automatics because they're garbage trucks. But that
garbage trucks,
geometry vein on the nozzle on the compressor side, I would think you could program to manipulate that to relieve. The bark, right? They know that it sees you're making pressure, you're making power, you're accelerating, and then it sees a sudden release of the throttle, and it would be able to go, open.
Yeah.
Let's let that air move or let it catch up to.
Well, there's another side of that too. If you've driven like even from a common rail up Cummins or any of the newer, like a newer Duramax, or let's see, they only had manual through the LLB7. So it would have been 2010 for the 6.4. But in the Cummins, that's where most of the manuals I've driven. You let off the throttle, it doesn't immediately drop off like a gas rig. It's like, like that.
Takes a bit.
If you've noticed,
it's like programmed into it.
Yeah, then they do that
to save
not
them,
just for the turbo, but it's for the whole aspect of it. Yeah.
So do you think that's a factor as to why manufacturers are getting away from manual transmissions and pickups?
Yeah, it's part of it. I think it's just
a factor.
Yeah, it could be a factor. A lot of it's just the sales are low.
You know? Yeah, not many people want to row gears anymore.
Yeah. It's all the man buns and the flip flops.
Exactly.
So, I guess I got one last question for you because we're getting close on time. But you obviously work on, well, I guess everything, but it seems like you kind of specialize in like the older diesels. What is your favorite older diesel? Like, I guess 7.3, 6 liter,
12 valve,
VP44 or 12 valve or Duramax. Like what?
Yeah.
What are you picking?
People hate on.
6.4s?
Yeah.
You like 6.4s?
Right, even I hate on a 6.4, but yeah. Yeah, I like the 7.3. I've got one.
7.3 versus 6 liter.
Well,
don't hurt Kenny's
you
feelings.
You don't have to go detailed. Just which would you take?
Personally, I would probably do a 6 liter just because of the the exhaust tone. It's very unique.
Just the exhaust tone.
But
it's his age, dude. You guys are 6.0s. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Well, you can find them really cheap, and you get a lot of truck for cheap. Like you can find King Ranch 05, 06, 07 for like 12, 14 grand, something like that.
I think that price is going up though. Like they're still.
It wasn't a 17 to 19 previously, and now they're coming down. Around here, we have a really elevated market, so they're probably in the high teens. But you get a Super Duty, especially you stick with the 05 up, you get the coil swap front end.
Yeah.
You get a really nice truck, King Ranch Lariat. And there's not much difference price-wise between the XLT and the King Ranch Lariat now.
Yeah.
In those, you get a lot of truck.
Well, and they're built better for towing.
Yeah.
I mean, they have better brakes.
You got a lot better.
Trannies were better.
The inside,
5R110s.
Yeah.
Well, the big, they have their 3.5 shift flare issues, but you can go to B&R LKQ and you can get one for like $700.
Well, I just think if you look at that tranny compared to an E4OD, it's a better animal.
You have to build the snot out of an E4OD 4100 to really hold any kind of power, and they do. I mean, guys swap 4100s into the 6 liters, stuff like that, because you have it's a lot better way the circuitry is designed, so it doesn't go clutch to clutch, it goes clutch to band and stuff. So
how many manuals were out there for 6.0 trucks?
There's a decent
There was
amount.
quite a bit, so you could probably do some
6.4s.
And 6.4s, you probably do some headhunting and like really start. You could find a manual truck, which would be hard to find now. On current stuff, right?
The problem with
well, no, I mean like newer, like past the 6.0 stuff.
Yeah.
So 6 liters, you can make 450 with tuning on a bone stock truck, and I've done it with a couple of trucks. And to make 450 on a 7.3, you got to do a lot of. If you have a Super Duty, it's not as bad because you start with e-fuel, you start with an intercooler. Now the truck's another 800 plus pounds heavier, but
well, and like I said, I always think like, hey, we can build all the power in the world, but the braking is the other part.
Yeah, you got to be able to stop it.
Yeah,
and the tranny,
you get a 4-wheel disc brakes,
and you get Hydro Boost from the factories. You get, and like I said, 05, you get better turning radius.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's a ton of things there.
Unit hubs.
That solidifies why Devin and I have always said, like, if you really love OBS trucks, like we love OBS trucks,
right?
Get one to have fun with.
Yeah.
But if you do a lot of towing, whether it's for work or for personal or whatever, it's not dumb if you can afford to get a newer, better truck suited to do the task more reliably.
Yeah.
You're gonna enjoy it a hell of a lot more and save the OBS.
Yeah.
Yes.
For when you want to drive it and you want to, you can tow every once in a while. Hey, I'm gonna, do. But it's like,
you're not going to be competing with the newer trucks when you're towing. You can turn them up and all that, but you got to watch. You have to watch, pay attention, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
you have. That's
you
the
can't
one.
Just sit there.
There it is, right there.
Drive. You can't be complacent.
If you've ever done a trip towing, like heavy shit,
and
you're spend more time watching your edge monitor or your monitor in general for your EGTs, it takes the stress level up a couple notches.
No more fun about it,
right, and you're like, hey, everything's cool on flat ground. Let's say you live in Texas or Oklahoma and everything's flat. Hey, that's easy peasy. But when you live where there's a pass or any kind of grade, and you're like, okay, I got to build EGT, or I got to watch my EGTs pulling this pass.
Coming down the hill with disc drum setup,
and hey, don't hate on drum brakes, bud. But I'm just saying, like, that takes, if you have never experienced a truck that you don't have to watch your EGTs all the time, there's actually a factor of that goes into it. And I hate to say that because when you pull or use a cool body style truck, be it an OBS Chevy, OBS Ford, first gen Dodge, the fun factor and miles per miles go up like 25 to 30% over a factory truck, if not more.
Right.
Like, check it out, dude. This thing's badass. I'm doing this stuff. But the point of having to watch your monitor the entire time sucks balls.
Yeah.
It does, especially if you have kids and dogs and shit in the back, and you're like, the chaos.
Yeah, you're running a motor at its limit. Right. Because you got it tuned up and you want to keep up.
350 horse, it's double what they made at the tire. So,
right.
Yeah.
And the last thing you want to do is he broke down because of shit on the, when he broke down the side of the road. And so you're stressing about that.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why, like, hey, unless like Kenny said, if you have the means, you have your tow truck that's something newer, doesn't have to be brand new. Then you have your OBS that you party with on the weekends or take out on sunny days. Or like in your case, do smoky burnouts and big horsepower shit,
I was hoping you were going to drive that.
Oh, yeah. I got to pull it all back apart because the front cover is eroded.
Oh, no way.
I put it all back together for the OBS Fest, or an OBS last year, and I got it back and I started dumping coolant out of the front cover. So now I got to put a billet front cover.
So you have come to our show.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, shit. I come in.
Yeah.
I told you he was on the video we did.
If you watch his recap from last year, I'm about at 50 minutes or something like that.
How many times have you come to our show?
I think this year will probably be like the 4th or something like that. I think I've been every year except 1 year.
It's so big, I forget, like, people don't, I forget that.
You're busy running around everywhere. Yeah.
We have no idea what we're doing, trust me.
I hang out with Chris Rutledge and all those guys.
Okay, yeah. So then, this year we're giving a truck away for free, right?
Yeah.
Not free.
No, we're free in it. That's right, people. We are going to make it free. We're not doing a raffle with it. I changed my mind again.
Again?
Yeah,
Really?
dude. Yeah, I'm going to give it away free.
Dang.
Like they don't have to buy anything to win it.
You just
part of the entry.
The entry.
We're going to try and make it. We're going to make it happen. I told Lisa and Will 2 days ago. I was in the shop. Actually, I was dropping off Keegan at school, and I was driving the shop. And I'm like, dude, we can't say it's a free if you have to put in for a raffle. And I'm like, I've always said to Kenny and Lisa, if the truck show doesn't grow, then I'm going to shut it down.
Right.
Because I'm not in for that. I want it to grow. Not for monetary reasons, but like I want it to be the biggest OBS truck show ever and like grow it. What a better way to tell people, hey, come to our show.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a free, someone's going to win a free 33,000 mile OG truck just for showing up.
Yeah.
I think you got
to do it at the Powerland Park too.
Oh,
yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
And I would try and make sure it's none of the vendors that are.
Oh no, I already said that. I already told Will. No vendors can put in for it.
Yeah,
it has to
be
no
someone. Like vendors, helpers, or anything.
No, none of that.
It has to be somebody that came to the show.
Correct. 100%.
I want to see somebody. What would make my day is somebody who maybe has attended the show for a handful of years, loves the trucks, but they're maybe in a spot where they're like, dude, I got a car, I don't really need a truck, but I get to have one
for sure,
and they get to take one home, and then. Guess what? The next year they come back and they bring it, and they're like, check out, look what I did with the truck. I've been driving it. It's been so great.
I think that'd be cool. Yeah. I think it'd be cool to give a truck away just for showing up.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome.
What other truck show does that? Or a show in general? I don't know. I don't go to a lot of car shows, but I've always thought like when we started this, I told Lisa when we started this, I'm like, I think it'd be cool to give a truck away. But
do you have to pre-reg? Or is this can you sign up?
Well, see, that's what we're thinking of, make it part of the pre-reg, but then it's like, well, what happens if it's people just walk in?
Yeah.
Like, you'd want it to be something that just
or if those people don't show up,
So we're trying to figure that part out. And I don't want to make, the problem is everyone thinks it's really easy, but it's very tough on our staff to make it so that it's not more headache for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to figure out. So
sweet.
I did have one quick, I thought this earlier.
Go ahead, Kenny.
You mentioned horsepower mounts, makes 350, makes 450.
Yeah.
But something that I personally feel is people get hung up on a number.
Yeah.
Dude, I gotta make 400. I gotta make 500. But I'm sure those same people, if you put them in a truck that runs really well and carries its weight well, we'll say, and let's say it makes 350, and they're like, I gotta have 500. Like, we'll drive that truck over there, go look around it, and they come back and like, oh my gosh, whatever that has, I need. And you're like, well, it's only making 350, and they're like,
oh yeah.
You know, so I think the point I'm trying to make or mention is that the number isn't the end all be 100%. All. It's about what I call the butt dyno. What's it feel like when you drive it?
The butt dyno.
The butt dyno is key.
It feels pretty.
That's a good one.
Yeah. You know, it doesn't. Who cares what the number is? Because guys will get all bummy thinking they're like, man, my truck runs good. Then they'll go put it on the rollers. And they're like, oh, it only put down like 250.
But what if it has some big wide boys on it, and some skinny rubber bands, and some rock lights? Does that butt dyno go up or down? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, so there's something to be said about how well a truck runs and how usable it is in the real world. Yeah. I can build a 400 or it's a good example of my truck. I mean, it's made 500 with that stage 3. It made a little less with all this setup because something's not running quite right for some reason, but it should be in the mid 5s. That truck, if I had my parents drive it or something like that, it's not something that they would be able to really easily pick up on because it's super smoky. You gotta run the RPMs way out on it because the 64 doesn't light till like 2200. You have to drive around it and all that. You can't tow with it really. Yeah. It's got a bed stack, so you can't really. The whole bed's covered in soot.
Yeah. It's better than a hood stack.
So, but I mean, you can. So, making 550. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Is it usable in an OBS? Not really, unless you're just having fun with it. If you get a truck that runs well, get your truck running really nice, and it's usable for everything you do, and you can turn it up, have a little fun with it without blowing it up. That's the key. If
with a good injector turbo combo, I can make
lights. 450, 500. You keep pushing the power like that, it's less and less usable, which means you're going to drive it less and less. So. And then you're not going to get the enjoyment out of it. Yeah, it's fun to, get thrown back with 500 horse, but then what's 600, and then you keep pushing it. Oh, man, you get bit by that power bug. But
how many people do you know that wish they would have slowed down and stopped it? They're like, man, I wish I just would have held it off at that one point because that truck was a lot more fun than it is now.
Well, I'm the perfect example because I am currently borrowing one of the parents' vehicles temporarily because I don't have a daily driver because everything that I touch is now so rowdy that I can't drive it. My second gen makes like 850 the tire, but because I did this compound setup in it that doesn't have room for an air filter, I can't drive it, daily drive it. So, it's just
nobody's safe.
Ooh, I'd have to get like a Prius or something like that, so I physically cannot.
Don't go that far. Don't go that far.
I like don't go that far, Brad. I can see you in one of those.
Oh yeah, something like that.
I'm with you. I've had big turbo cars that didn't light until high in the RPM.
Yeah, Joe's truck or cars kind of like that.
Exactly, and they're a lot of fun to drive, but like to daily drive it around, it's actually kind of a dog. Because you're always out of boost, and in order to get in boost, you have to drive like a complete asshole. Yeah. To where having like a small turbo that lights fast and that like you don't need a lot of horsepower to feel like you're.
As Kenny says, that was good, Kenny. That's key. Pretty good. Well, any truck that we always put together for our marketing side, I always say, can I have the blonde lady hop in it and drive it?
Absolutely.
Right.
That's my factor of all the vehicles. Like Kenny and I always have a discussion, like the blue truck finished up or whatever it is, Cowboy or any of those, right? The Bronco. Can your wife, girlfriend, whatever, just hop in it and just drive it, and you don't have to stress about it.
Yeah. Or you don't have to give them a list of things to watch.
Flip this switch, do this thing, hit this button.
You should be able to toss the keys to anybody, be like, hop in and go.
On the same note, you can have a spicy vehicle that they don't drive, and you have a daily that you don't modify, Brad. That you like. I mean, it's each to his own, but you're right. It's like at some point you take the reliability out of it or the fun out of it if you make it too gnarly.
Yeah,
But I don't know. This has been awesome. This has been a wealth of knowledge, Brad. Dude, you're like supposed to be working today, so I appreciate you taking time for our shit show
thanks
here.
For the invite, man. It's just a pleasure. I love talking shop and.
Well, and we're not, like Kenny and I always say, we're not experts on anything, right? Like we don't tout ourselves as experts. So someone comes in, gives us some more knowledge, something we may not learn or haven't had experience with, we love. Mm-hmm. So now we got to have Brad do the marketplace with us. We're going to see.
Oh, we want to do that.
Does Brad love the big bro tire wheel combos, or what are we talking here, Brad?
What are we going to look for?
Well, let's obviously OBS trucks. I mean, let's just talk about that first real quick. No, come on, Kenny, pick a state.
Mexico.
Oh,
okay.
Rust free.
See, yeah, local's not as much fun either because I've probably seen all of them.
Although that white one doesn't look too bad.
Yeah, Albuquerque.
Oh yeah,
Roswell.
I love Roswell. Big Alien fan.
Okay, what do we got? Let's. You know what? Brad's here. Let him pick. Go ahead.
Look at the 10.5 one real quick. That
I was
eyeing
that
one. Just to see what somebody thinks 10.5.
Okay, so Brad, how we play this game, if you've ever listened to our lovely shitty podcast here, is we have to give a pretty good description for listeners that aren't watching, right? So color, and you know what, feel free to rip it apart. We have no qualms. So go ahead, Brad, we'll let you lead with this one.
Yeah, so we got a 95 F350 super crew cab long bed dually. It's got a blue main tone with a white stripe. That's in 10.5 with 246 on it. Is it a 4-wheel drive?
Ooh, not looking at that fender gap. She looks like 2-wheel drive.
That fiberglass says otherwise.
Yeah. That's true. Fiberglass.
It's got this, like the Centurion style steps on it, and
doesn't it suck though?
That is not a 10.5.
Guys, doesn't it suck? Doesn't it suck when you go to the first picture and you're like, dude, check out that truck, and you're like, 10.5. Yes, and then you go to the second picture, you're like, oh,
this truck is clapped.
It's a Powerstroke.
Yeah. Ooh. It's got seat covers. The whole inside is covered in dust.
Well, it looks like it's like, what is the, hold on, time out. What is
somebody ate a whole box of graham crackers in the back and left it on the floor.
So what's you guys notice the door panels? Did someone,
they pulled off the,
is that what that is? Look at the door panels. The side of the door panels.
Are those
velour or what is that?
Suede.
I don't know what that is. So the door panels don't have the OG
go
paneling.
back. Look at the. Oh, that's just a cover. I thought it was like crusty.
No, it's so. I mean, hey, we're selling a truck for almost $11,000. You think you'd vacuum it out? Just saying.
Also, look at the center console is tan, and then everything else is the dark blue. So that's different.
No, I think it's got seat covers on it.
Oh yeah, it does have seat cover. Well, but the carpet
is
different. Blue, yeah.
Look at the door panels are grayish.
Yeah.
This thing is
there's some weird shit going on here.
Hodgepodge mess.
Oh, that's a heavily used bed.
But you know what though? I have seen someone in this room's bed have more waves than that. Just saying.
Me?
Without a bed mat in it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is not. We gotta do another one. This thing's garbage.
That's awesome.
All right, find another one. I'm partial to that short wide flare.
Short wide's kind of sweet.
With a flare side.
Yeah, 93. That's a
Oh, it's
F-150.
Oh, it's looking rough.
That's the thing.
That's right. It's the same picture.
You look at it. It's in the marketplace. There's like 15 trucks around it. You can't see it.
And then you get into it. You're like oh boy, shit,
because it's got a nice chrome bumper on it.
So go ahead and read the.
Oh yeah, so it's a 93 F-150 5-liter flare side, which I really like those short bed flare sides. And it's in the truck runs great, just needs a little paint, and that's all. Oh, I'm sure.
That's sure. 100,000 miles is what it says.
And they want 6.5 for it.
So listed 29 weeks ago. So clearly something's not working for him.
I feel like the flare
I actually
sides,
like the wheel and tire setup.
Yeah, it's got like a
bold comment there, bud.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's curious.
I do. That's what caught my eye. Oh yeah, the paint's starting to look worse as the pictures go. He's got brand new headlights in it.
From a distance though, it looks cool.
Those are Spider brand headlights, I think.
Oh, nice. And there's no interior shots, but I see a red dash.
And the flare side, you notice how the flare side's like all something's wrong with the actual flare part.
You know why? You know why, Devin?
Yeah, because it's not part of the bed.
Nope.
Yeah, separate.
Because all flare side trucks came with factory side steps that match that.
Right, that's right.
So it's missing the steps.
Can you?
So it hangs low.
So what might happen is you had a driver door impact, and they might have.
I don't know. It's weird.
Or they put a flare side bed on it.
Oh, it could be. Yeah.
But doesn't the flare? I mean, you've always liked the flare side, Kenny. I've always given you shit for it, but now I'm kind of like, okay, it looks somewhat good. I will take it back.
Yeah.
The flare side, like I feel like someone's out there grabbing all these flare sides, and they're gonna be worth a ton of money.
Oh yeah, because I haven't seen one in forever.
No.
What else we got?
What else? Yeah, find something.
One more.
Wow, $30,000. How about that one?
Let's check that. Yeah, big number one. There we go.
What is it?
So we got a 97 F250 extended cab, 7.3 trans 411, so set up for towing, which is interesting, and a 3/4 ton. It's got a billet transmission, so the case is billet. Everything's billet.
It's machined out of one thing of aluminum.
Piece of aluminum, yeah.
Nice.
Gooseneck and frame. Yeah, stage 69.
Stage 69.
Oh my, that's good.
One picture.
Good paint. So I can tell right off the bat the cab mounts are sagged really bad.
Very common.
Yeah, but it's got. So far, the paint looks decent.
Which
red
that combo though you don't see very often.
No, with a white lower stripe, yeah.
And it still has a factory step on it.
Yeah.
See how that step hangs down like on the flare side? It
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
But
It's got exhaust on it.
It's got a Banks Power logo on the fender.
And only one picture for $30K.
Is that it? There's one. Oh wow.
I mean, it's a great looking truck, but like, give us some other pictures.
Man.
It's got all the factory hubcaps.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks,
which is rare especially for the fronts.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course, they could be eBay specials because.
I know, right?
China's
I forgot that you can get
those.
like you can get Dorman ones.
Yeah.
On Rock Auto.
Do they look the same up close?
They're not quite the same, but
the chrome's probably like the wavy plastic.
Yeah, they're a good approximation.
They're better than you'd think
for forever. So
right, and everyone
can.
Cab lights.
Cab lights factory.
It's got a headache rack.
Is that it's got something.
And it gets cold there. He's got the snaps on the front of the grill for the cover.
That's a good point.
Yep. So it gets cold there wherever he's at.
So it's an older guy that's got it.
He knows what he's got apparently.
Oh man,
$30K, but with one picture, no interior
and it's got
picture.
An AO4D.
Oh,
nice. That's a new generation.
Well, it's billet, remember?
It's full billet.
It's full billet.
Full billet.
Listen, what would that cost? Can you imagine the block of aluminum and the machining that would go in there? It'd be like $30,000 right there just for the tranny.
Yeah.
For the case.
For the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll call Casey Meadows and say, hey, I want him to machine me one. Just like, here you go, bud.
Oh my gosh. It'd be brutal.
That's been a rip, bud.
Totally.
What do we have in time wise?
We're
there, huh?
Hour 15.
Oh, geez. Okay.
I just want Brad to be able to catch his breath.
I know, Brad.
I got another hour in me.
Well, thank you for having us, or for coming and doing this. It's been,
Absolutely.
you have so much more knowledge than what in that area than what we do, and it's really beneficial. How can people find like your shop and your like Instagram and that sort of stuff?
So I got a Google business page, Barrett Performance and Engineering. We're out of Bend, Oregon, and just out of Tumalo. I do have a website, bpepower.us, but it's not up right now. I just changed to Techmetric Shop Management, which doesn't manage the website anymore like Mitchell did. But we'll get that squared away. All my other social media, Instagram, Facebook is bpepower.us. So Barrett Performance Engineering, that BPE Power. Need to be more active on it, but it's just one of those things.
How much time do you have during the day?
Yeah. I've got pictures like crazy and post ideas and all this kind of stuff, but I just don't have the time to do it or the energy once I get home at midnight. So,
well, Brad, go ahead, John.
No,
sorry.
You go.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, I think it's a big deal being a shop owner for you to break away from your show to come here and hang out with us for a little bit. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely,
that's not easy. So a lot of people don't realize that. So, and Kenny, thank you so much for coming, even though we didn't get a microphone because we want you in the back corner there. So
he can get a microphone next time.
Doesn't Kenny bring in some like good retros? Like you and me just blaze away. Like Kenny's like, wait, hold on a minute, stop. There's some things people need to know.
You gotta slow me down a lot of times. Yeah, I just keep going. So it's perfect.
It's the brick nose in me. It's a little slower.
Well, on that note, thanks everyone listening to our derpy little podcast. I'm your host, Devin with OBS Solutions.
I'm John with Carrot Customs, and we'll catch you next time.
Oh, wait. And remember, ask us questions. We love to answer questions. John especially.
And
just
if you
loves
liked this, maybe we can convince Brad to come back for, round 2 or...
He's only down the road, so it's not that far.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Very good. Well, thank you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.